Hello everyone, my name is Arum Kusuma Permatasari. I'm from MPBI 29 Chatolic Widya Mandala University of Surabaya. Today I'm going to reveal an article of discourse analysis with the title is School Reform, Hybrid Discourses and Second Language Literacise from Meg Gebhard 2005. We're going to go to background of the study. This article analyzes how school reforms in the United States during the 1990s supported transformative literacy practices in the context of a Hmong English third grade classroom. Using methods that allow for an analysis of both macro and micro discourses shaping the literacy practices of English language learners, this two-year study illustrates how combined discourses at the state, district, school, and classroom levels created a discursive space that allowed for the production of hybrid texts that disrupted, if only temporarily, many of the reproductive forces associated with modern schooling. Then, the literature review I took from Olson 1997 describes a similar set of institutional structures and practices, but goes one step further to consider the impact of racial identity on the process of learning English in an urban high school. In a two-year ethnographic study, Olson describes how the process of second language acquisition was also a process of Americanization, in which the task of learning English was also shaped by the task of becoming racialized into a highly structured social order, where one's position is determined by skin color and where, as a result, one has very unequal access to resources, opportunities, and education. Then the research question is, the central questions guiding this investigation are how do students, teachers, and administrators negotiate the discourse of macro school reform policies, and how do the positions they take up through their use of talk and print influence English language learners' academic literacy development. The methodology. The writers use a critical perspective of language and social change to conceptually and methodologically connect an analysis of macro discourses shaping educational reforms and micro classroom practices shaping English language learners' academic literacy developments. This perspective maintains that the dialogic processes by which students and teachers jointly produce and interpret oral and written texts during classroom activities simultaneously reflects, creates, and recreates historical rooted ways of knowing social relations and material conditions. Then next, apply to a discussion of school restructuring and classroom literacy practice, this perspective requires that two constructs be defined. First, based on the work of Key, the writers define school reforms such as SB 1274 as an intervention or socio-technical device that attempts to design new institutional structures and semiotic practices that will create new communities and communities of practices, new ways of being, and new ways of knowing. And then the second, based on the work of Chatolic and Verklo 1999, the writers argue that these engineered communities of practice are hybrid and that students, teachers, parents, and administrators are positioned physically and discursively in new roles that they take up and remix with other roles in unpredictable ways that may or may not yield more equitable social relations. And then In conducting this 2-year study of the micro-textual practices of English language learners and their teachers in the context of systemic school reform, the writers used the tool of qualitative inquiry and critical discourse analysis. The data sources are of various types: field notes from observations of school life as experienced by vocal students, transcription from audio-taped, semi-structured interviews with students, parents, teachers, teachers' aides, and administrators, videotaped classroom and playground activities, and relevant documents. We go to the phase 1. Phase 1 involved conducting a broad content analysis, Bogdan and Biglan, to profile and code the school's activities regarding specific institutional aspects of schooling. For example, student grouping practice, approach to curriculum and instruction, then opportunities for teacher professional development. Phase 2, there are several activities that the writers do in this phase. 1. Paid close attention to how participation within literacy activities was structured and how teachers and students appropriated various signs and tools available to them in accomplishing tasks, especially tasks associated with language art instruction. 2. Identified how speaking position constructed the English language learners' identities as members of classroom communities and how such identities supported or constrained academic learning opportunities. The last one is interviewed teachers and students concerning their text production and interpretation practices using selected text as prompts for exploring the data further from the perspective. And then phase 3 is the last phase, involved analyzing the discourse of school restructuring at the institutional level and the discourse of school restructuring as experienced by individual focal students in specific classroom contexts. The purpose of this phase was to determine where patterns of macro-institutional discourse and micro-classroom discourse intersected and how this intersection reinforced historical rooted school identities for English language learners or provided opportunities for transformation. And then for the data analysis. Olive Grove Elementary School. Analysis of the formation of Senate Bill 1274 and how it was enacted at Olive Grove Elementary School shows the degree to which the discourse of the New Work Order hybridized with the discourse of school reform. Olive Grove Elementary School is located in Northern California in a small town I'm calling Hoover. At the time of the study, Hoover had a population of approximately 12,000. In 1990, only 1% of the nearly 550 students attending Olive Grove were designated as Asian. 2 years later, this number had grown to almost 30%, a percentage composed almost entirely of Hmong and Mian speakers. Simultaneously, the percentage of all students who were eligible for a free or reduced cost lunch grew to 81%. Motivated by the belief that a strong economy is contingent on a strong public education system, the roundtable asked the educational research firm Berman and Wheeler Associates to analyze the condition of elementary and secondary education in California and recommend reforms. Then, institutional context, the hybrid discourse of the New Work Order and school reform. In response to this dramatic change in the school's demographic profile, several teachers, the principal, the school psychologist, and a member of the local school board began investigating alternative ways of approaching the business of schooling. These alternative ways reverberate with the salient characteristics of the New World Order, specifically the restructuring initiative the theme presented to their college and to the state's funding agency centered on four reforms. 1. Grouping students in multi-age classroom from kindergarten, grades 1 till 2, and grades 3 until 6. 2. Integrating English language learners into multi-age classroom taught by teachers with both elementary and ESL teaching credentials. 3. Implementing a collaborative project-based approach to teaching and learning. 4. Implementing programs designed to develop a school culture that respects differences and supports students use their home language. Next, classroom context, the hybrid roles and discourse in Miss Retham's room. To analyze the implication of Olive Grove's restructuring initiative for English language learners in a specific local context, the writers work closely with Martha Retham, a white middle-class woman certified in elementary education and teaching English as a second language. At the time of the study, Miss Retham had 14 years of experience in a number of different elementary schools and had applied to teach at Olive Grove because she wanted to teach in a multi-age and multilingual context. And then rather SB 1274, as shaped by the principal and other school leaders, provided her with an opportunity to experiment with beliefs about teaching and learning that she already held strongly. Then she had in that study, she had 28 students assigned to her room with an even distribution of Hmong and English-only students, as well as a nearly even distribution of boys and girls. 5 of the students were third graders, 5 were fourth graders, 9 were fifth graders, and the remaining 9 were sixth graders. Kiss between Hmong and English language in class. An English-only boy raised a concern with 2 Hmong girls who sat at his table. In this case, this boy is grouped by 2 Hmong girls, so there are 3 students in a group. His complaint was that they were speaking Hmong all the time. These 2 girls were speaking Hmong all the time, and he didn't know what they were talking about. He was angry because he was sure they were talking about him. Miss Retham asked the Hmong girls how they would like to respond. The girls indicated that they were not talking about him, and with the teacher assistants, added that they needed to speak Hmong to help each other get their work done. The teacher concluded this exchange by reinforcing the girls' right to speak in Hmong, but added that they should check in with the boy to offer and get his help, and in doing so, form a better working group. And then, hybridity and academic literacies, friend, teacher, and students. We go to the next case. At the beginning of this study, Pahwa was in the 3rd grade. Miss Retham described her as very competent in speaking English, but as one of the less proficient readers and writers in the class. As was typical of writing workshop routines in Miss Retham class, students elected to work in small, self-selected group as Miss Retham and the bilingual aid circulated through the room providing assistance as needed in English and Hmong. So, this is the example of Pahua and Sandra conversations. These two are in one group. We can take a look to the Miss Rhythm first. Pahua, not right now. I'm working with Monica still. Then Pahua, okay, plays with pencil, pushes it up her sleeve, then puts it between her thumb and forefinger, tries to write and then pulls it out, looks to the ceiling with the pencil pressed to her lips. Now, what should I write about? Looks at Sandra. Then Sandra, keeping her attention on her paper. What have you got? I wrote 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Counts her paragraphs. Sandra continues to work. You only have to write about 3. Then, the next example, Pahua said, I don't know what to write about. Someone off camera says something to her and she smiles. Sandra, still focused on her own work. What about your mind map? Pahua answered, I already did my mind map. What do you blah blah? Oh, I get it. I should write about what I like about Olive Grove Elementary School. Pahua starts writing. Sandra watches her. Pahua reads what she had just written. Olive Grove Elementary School. Sandra, do you want to read what I have? Pahua, yeah. Smiles and nods her hand enthusiastically, reaches for Sandra's paper. As this transcript reveals, Pahua was able to position or draft her friend Sandra into assuming the role of a teacher by using the space of the classroom, turns at talk, and gestures. This strategy was evident when Pahua left her assigned seat to work with Sandra. In line 3, when Pahua addressed herself by saying, Now, what should I write about? But directed her gaze at Sandra. And when Pahua sighed heavily and said to herself, I don't know what to write about, in line 13. In line 14, Sandra partially took up the invitation to assume a teacher role when she asked a procedural scaffolding question. What about your mind map? In her next turn at talk, however, Sandra began to transition from a friend role into a teacher role when she said, Do you want to read what I have? In line 16. Findings. In critiquing this aspect of the school restructuring discourse, it is evident that hybrid text produced in Ms. Ratham's class simultaneously created possibilities for academic literacy learning as well as new forms of marginalization. The data show the apparent limitation of the common sense belief that students naturally develop their own literacy abilities when they teach others. In making this comment, the writers were not suggesting that students were not developing other valuable abilities, and they were suggesting that the adultification of students, particularly girls and older bilingual students, into teaching roles revealed a new kind of inequity that manifested in a kind of literacy ceiling for very capable students in this class. The data suggests that the synergistic agency of the individuals involved in California schools restructuring initiative at Olive Grove aligned practices that were powerful and stable during the funding period. A counter discourse to modern schooling practices could be established in Ms. Rhythm's classrooms. Because of the collective action taken by individuals who use their institutional authority to serve aligned ideologies. The conclusion is, the data indicate that English language learners participated in this practice because Ms. Rhythm and the school's administrators rejected monolingual, individualistic, patchwork approach to teaching academic literacy in favor of more late modern ways of language learning that can be described as distributed, interdisciplinary, and multi-voiced. Although the transformative space created in Miss Rhythm's classroom was apparently fragile, the findings from this study have implications for critical studies of language learning and school change. Namely, they foreground a need to develop data collection and analysis methods that support teachers and policymakers in analyzing how macro and micro schooling practices intersect and support and or constrain the academic literacy practices of English language learners over time. Okay, that's all about my presentation. See you.